You ever watching TV at night with the lights out? What do you see when you turn off the TV? You see a glow coming off the TV, right? That's radiation afterglow. That's remnant heat coming off the TV. Well, there's remnant heat coming off the universe. It's still out there. The universe is still cooling off. This heat is just a couple of degrees above absolute zero, but these guys discovered it. When this discovery was made, even an agnostic astronomer, a guy who didn't know if there's a God or not, his name is Robert Jastrow, who sat in the chair Edwin Hubble sat in at the Mount Wilson Observatory until recently. Jastrow said this: when they discovered this radiation afterglow, he said, those who believe that the universe is eternal can no longer believe in that theory. This put the nail in the coffin of what was at that point called the steady state theory, that the universe was static and eternal. If it's static and eternal, it doesn't need a cause. Jastrow said this discovery put that theory to bed. You know what? They weren't done yet. They said, you know what? If this Big Bang cosmology is true, this story of how the universe came into existence out of nothing's true in a great explosion, there should be very fine temperature variations in that radiation afterglow. But they couldn't measure these temperature variations from Earth because there's too much atmospheric interference. So they were going to have to put a satellite up. And in the 80s, they designed a satellite, and they were going to put it up on the space shuttle. But in 1986, the Challenger space shuttle exploded off the launching pad. And the space shuttle program was canceled for a while, so they had no way to get the satellite up. So they redesigned the entire satellite. They made it half its original size. And then they launched it up on a French Titan rocket and put it into orbit in 1989. For 3 years, this satellite circled the Earth taking measurements of the radiation afterglow. They had to wait 3 years to announce their findings because the temperature variations were very, very fine. They had to make sure that they weren't measuring something that was other than these temperature variations. For 3 years, they took readings, and then finally in 1992, they announced their results. What they found shocked the scientific world. In fact, the leader of the expedition, this man right here, George Smoot, said, we found the machining marks of the Creator. They found temperature variations that were down to 1 part in 100,000. In fact, this guy right here said, if you're religious, it's like looking at God. That was the headline in Time magazine, May 1992. If you're religious, it's like looking at God. Stephen Hawking, the great physicist I mentioned earlier, said, this is the scientific discovery of the century, if not all time. And these temperature variations, according to the theory, allowed the galaxies to form in the early universe so we could be here. Now, you know, a lot of people, when you go to school, they want to talk about Darwinism, as if Darwinism puts God out of business. Even if Darwinism were true, and I don't think it is. In fact, I think there's many problems with the Darwinistic theory from the goo to you via the zoo. I don't think that's true. But even if it were 100% true, you don't just need a designer to start life. You need a designer at the very beginning of the universe. That if you were to change these temperature variations by an imperceptible amount, we wouldn't even be here. In other words, the universe is designed from the very beginning. The Big Bang was not a chaotic explosion where junk goes everywhere. No, it was a very fine-tuned, precise, shepherded creation. So even if Darwinism is true, you still need a designer.